Welcome to episode 101 of Eat, Drink, Write, an Urban Fantasy Whiteboard. Today, we're going to be talking about nature as symbolism.
Yeah.
We've done a couple symbolism things. But first, how was your week?
I think every week.
Me too. Right there with you.
I think every week is going to be just hectic from here on out. I think I'm just doomed for that. I'm giving a good zillion talks, one of those being my graduation defense. So I think I'm just going to be a crackhead for the next 3 months or so. So that's probably going to be my answer every week at this point is that, I'm a crackhead. That's about it. But it wasn't bad. We went up to North Carolina and visited my fiance's family, and it snowed while we were there. And so we got to play in the snow, and we built a snowman and did the whole thing. So I do get some fun playtime in the midst of trying to actually do things.
If I could carry a tune, I would break out into the "Do you want to build a snowman?"
Oh, we sung that the whole time.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah. How was your week?
Busy. We went to your dad's. They had that party. It was a delayed Christmas party because of COVID. They couldn't do it at Christmas time.
Yeah.
So it was a delayed holiday party. And we stayed in this beautiful antebellum hotel and drank and ate way too much. And
that sounds lovely. I got a text from my mother at I think 12:30 in the morning, and I was already asleep because I'm now the old lady apparently. And I wake up at 7 or whatever again because I'm the old lady, and get this text from my mom at like 12:30, and she says, "I'm at a dive bar. I'm drunk." And I was like, "Oh, good for you."
Yeah, it was fun. It really was a dive bar, but it had live music and you could request them to play stuff. And so for the most part, they did a great job. I really put it to them. I asked them because Meatloaf died last week. I asked them to play Paradise by the Dashboard Light. They struggled with that one, but but I wanted to honor Meatloaf, even though he died of COVID and was an anti-vaxxer. So,
well,
but yeah, great musician. So anyway,
cool. Well, it sounds like fun though. It sounds like you had a good
had a great time. Wonderful time. It was well needed.
That's awesome.
But we are not as young as we used to, and we partied like we were college students, and we are no longer college students. So
listen, me neither. Me and my fiance, we went out a couple of weekends ago with some friends, and by went out, we went to their house or whatever, and we had all had COVID like literally the week before, so we were good to go, I guess, on that front. But we went over and had a few drinks, and the next day my fiance and I were like, I don't think we enjoy drinking that much anymore.
I mean, for real though, it's like a special event type thing now instead of a every night type thing like it was when I was in college.
Really though, yeah.
But yeah, we had great food. Some of the really, really good food in Alabama. They're right on the coast.
Yeah.
And so I got oysters and just wonderful stuff. It was great.
That's awesome.
So yeah, we had a good time.
Yeah.
What are you eating and drinking?
Well, okay. So my drink has a struggle behind it. Listen, I have been working.
She needs hard alcohol straight out of the bottle right now, guys. Listen. And that's not what she's drinking, but okay.
Well, actually, it's not straight out of the bottle. No. Hold on. No. So what happened is I got home and I knew I had to podcast. So I was like, okay, I'm going to put on a pot of tea or pot of water, or whatever, to warm it up, make some tea. And I was going to have some caffeine and just be, that kind of crackhead for the night. And so I go and I fill up the pot and I put it on the stove, and then I go and I'm talking to my fiance, what do we want to do for dinner? Like, are we going to order something? Do we want to cook some food? Like, what are we going to do? And then it's been like 10, 15 minutes and the pot still hasn't like started boiling. And so I was like, okay, did I turn it on? I go and check it hadn't been turned on. So, there was that. So then I turn it on and I'm waiting for it to warm up and everything. And I asked my fiance if she wanted tea, and she was like, well, actually, I want a drink. And I was like, oh, I was like, well, what are you going to make? And so we went back and forth and I was like, you know what? I actually want to drink too. I think I'll drink for the podcast and then do a tea for before bed.
Okay.
And she was like, okay, well, I'll make you a martini. So she made me a dirty martini and it's with those
Nice.
garlic olives.
Oh,
And
that's the best. Oh
yes.
my God.
And then we put in some like 2 normal olives for funsies. And so very, very good. It's delicious. And so I'm drinking, not hard liquor from the bottle, but I am drinking.
But you haven't, well, dirty martinis are pretty much hard liquor straight from the bottle, but you didn't eat dinner yet?
No. So
this is going to be a good one.
We ordered Chipotle, so that'll be
Okay.
here eventually. I'm getting a burrito.
Very nice. Yeah,
What
I haven't
about
eaten
you?
yet either. I'm drinking my usual wine. I'm not up to anything too spectacular after this weekend. I did all of that
Fair.
this weekend.
Yeah.
But although they made some killer cosmopolitans, which is my favorite drink, I drank cosmopolitans all weekend long.
Yeah.
Did switch to vodka sodas at the bar because we
Nice.
had been drinking all day. And I'm like, I think I need something with a little less alcohol because Cosmopolitan's pretty much straight alcohol with a splash of cranberry.
Right.
So, but we haven't eaten yet either. I can smell the spaghetti upstairs and I told them to go ahead and eat because I didn't know how long this was going to go.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that sounds great.
Sometimes we're chatty and sometimes we're faster. So we never know how long this is going to go.
This seems like a chatty episode so far and I'm not even drunk yet. So
okay, so let's dive into using nature as symbolism.
Yeah. So, we've done a few episodes on symbolism before, and I thought we could do one on nature symbolism. One, because I've realized in my own work, I typically use a lot of nature in some form or fashion. I really enjoy describing nature. I like using it in my novels somewhere. If I play a video game, I'm going to play like the druid that, does nature magic or whatever. So I thought this would be a really cool episode to do for, because you can use it in so many different ways.
Definitely.
So just to reiterate though, like what is symbolism, which I know I always go over definitions that seem fairly obvious, but I feel like it's, a good recap.
Yeah.
So this is using symbols to represent ideas or qualities, symbolic meaning attributed to natural objects or facts. And it's also an artistic and poetic movement or style of using symbolic images and indirect suggestion to express those like more vague ideas that you don't want to outright explain to your reader.
I like that you use the word poetic because you do see symbolism all the time in poetry.
Definitely.
Yeah, that is a huge thing in poetry. And
a lot of the time it is poetry that uses symbolism.
And it's not just for poetry. And that's what some writers might be thinking, oh, but I'm not writing poetry, I'm writing a novel. But it can be done in a novel too. I ran across a definition that said it's a person, object, place, event, or action that suggests more than its literal meaning.
Oh, that's a good definition.
I like that one too. That kind of hit it right on the nose, I thought.
Right. Well, because that's what I was trying to get at with like, it's not something that you want to just say outright to your reader. You want it to just, exist in the background and it does mean something, but it, you don't want to just say it outright, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
So what is nature symbolism specifically? And that's a complicated question, I feel like. Writers approach using nature as symbolism in a lot of different ways. There's, just think about nature itself. There's so many different things that you can kind of touch on, seasons, plant life, animals, elements, all of that is nature included. So, using it in your novel might look different than how somebody else uses nature symbolism in their novel.
I mean, it can be used, the same piece of nature can be used in so many different ways to express so many different things.
Definitely.
Snow can be cozy because you're by the fire. Snow can be death because you're freezing to death. It can mean so many different things depending on what you're writing and how you use it in your scene.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. For nature is everywhere. It's all around us. And I think it's using non-man-made things to make a point in your novel or poetry. because that is where it's used a lot.
Right.
But that in itself says something, non-man-made. There
Absolutely
is a whole lot of symbolism just with that, nature versus man, nature's fury versus man's destruction.
Definitely.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, one of the major plot lines, we've done plot episodes in the past. One of the major plot lines is, man versus nature, like you were talking about, Twister. I'm thinking of the movie Twister, The Day After Tomorrow. And these are all movie examples. I can't think of book examples at the moment, but The Day After Tomorrow, things where nature is the thing that is the quote unquote antagonist.
Yes. Yeah. There's a movie now out on Netflix. I think it's Netflix. It's like 5 minutes or 13 minutes, something like that.
Oh,
and it's a Twister movie, and I haven't watched it yet, but it's another one of those nature fury. I mean, and sometimes that is the whole point of your story is, man versus nature.
Definitely. Yeah.
But you can still get more subtle as well. You don't have to, smack somebody in the face with it's a tornado.
Yeah.
Destruction. You can actually be more subtle about it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So what are some examples of nature symbolism? So seasons, I mentioned that before. You've got spring, which is birth and rebirth, and new beginning, enlightenment, and new beginning. Oh, I said that already. Oh, the martini's kicking in.
It is. Wow. Yeah. Spring is also the time of the tornadoes, like you were talking about, tornadoes and storms, of moving from being dead to alive, which I guess is like what you said, birth and rebirth.
Yeah.
But it can literally be, death to life. Chaos from kindness. Wow. Chaos from calmness. I guess there is another story here. Taylor was running a little bit behind.
I was.
So I'm about 2 drinks in already.
Yeah, whenever I'm late, she's more drunk. That's how it works.
I log in. I'm the one that does the Zoom. So I log in, I send her the link, and then I've got my drink here and I'm drinking. Like this one is almost all gone already.
So you have an excuse. I'm barely into mine.
Oh God, that looks so good though.
It's delicious. It's fantastic.
I love dirty martinis.
They're wonderful.
But back to spring.
Yes.
Renewal, symbolism, purity. Purity is a good one. It depends on, think about your scenes in your book and what you're trying to get across, and you can use nature to get that across. And I think it's pretty amazing to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then just like think about the other seasons too. So like summer is, and I hadn't thought about this before researching this, but summer could symbolize maturity or knowledge.
I mean, also heat.
Yeah.
Stifling, suffocation, especially where we live here in the South United States. A time of slowness, a time of drinking sweet tea on the front porch, a time of play. Most of us have at least had summer breaks from school. And so there's that feeling of freedom and vacation and being lazy and carefree.
Right.
I remember just running out the door as soon as it was light outside, and I didn't come home until it was dark outside.
Yeah.
And I mean, just summer can mean all of those things. It just depends on how you use it in your writing.
Well, because there's also, I know a lot of stories use like heat waves as symbolism. The heat wave is building and the heat is just scorching, and every character in the novel is feeling it. Crime rates increase with like those kinds of things. And so in a novel, you build that up and you build that tension, and it's going to break at some point. And so that's a really good way to bring a season and like the weather into your story.
For sure.
And then you have autumn, so fall, that's the decline. You're nearing death. Growing old could be a piece of this symbolism. Things are starting to, like you said, slow down. They slow down in summer. They really slow down in fall.
Wasn't there some movies like October, meaning the coming to death? Like, wasn't there some movies with that? I think the whole title of the movie was September or October or something, and it was symbolizing this person dying of cancer or whatever it was. I think there's several of those movies out there, but that for sure is a way to use autumn. But I also
Yeah,
think of autumn as being cozy.
definitely.
You've got that crispness coming after the heat of summer. It's like you said, summer is broken and that relief has come in. It's
Yes.
actually my favorite time of year. I am
Yeah,
definitely a fall person.
I love it too.
But yeah, think of those type of feelings when you're writing. If you're using autumn as symbolism, think about how you want to use it, because you can use it in different ways.
Right. Also, I think it's interesting to think about, the fall leads into the holiday season. A lot of the time it can mean, going to see family, and, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, you can add that to your symbolism
Mm-hmm.
and describe it. Your word usage is also very important as you're doing the symbolism,
Mm-hmm.
in order to get the meaning that you want, across in your novel.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of people, if you describe, oh, it's getting cold, the sky is gray more often,
Mm-hmm.
everything, the leaves are dying. If you describe, things that way
The,
versus, like you said, the cozy side of
right,
things,
right.
like, oh, I get to snuggle in my hoodies and I get to
Mm-hmm.
go and have hot chocolate with my friends and like that kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So there's a very different, vibe, I guess, is
And yeah, you can use the symbolism depending on what word choice you use to get
mhm.
across whatever point it is. Like, I mean, that those two movies that I'm thinking of, um, the dying, I think one might have been an old person. I don't know if they died of cancer or whatever, but that it's very heart wrenching. And you
Yeah,
get that just from the title of that movie.
right.
That
Mhm.
that's what that's going to be about. It's going to be about death. It's going to be about,
Absolutely.
well, dying,
Dying.
the
Yeah, the
process of dying.
of getting there, which leads
Yeah.
us to winter, which
Yeah.
is symbolic of death and sleep or hibernation, stagnation. Everything comes to a standstill. Think of I was in the snow in North Carolina this weekend. Everything is covered in a blanket, and it
Mm-hmm.
hushes the sounds of everything. Everything is
Mm-hmm.
quiet. So just stagnation, that stillness that comes with it.
Yeah. I think that it would be good to use that in a scene where, like in an action adventure novel, where there's assassins coming, and that the quiet, the quiet that the snow represents, with your just everything's kind of holding its breath
Right.
at that point. And that's how it feels, at least, here in the South. We don't get snow a lot, so it means a lot more to us down here than it does in places that have a lot of snow. It might not be considered that way, the way that we think of it here.
Right.
But basically, winter is one that is full of the ability to use for symbolism. You've got the skeletal trees, the leaves have all fallen
Yes.
off, to signify death. You've got the cold, the bleakness, the long, cold days. I mean, I guess actually the days are short. They're even shorter during the
Yeah,
winter.
true.
So
Yeah.
you could use that, the shadows that are there, the limited lightness, the lack of light, that
Hmm.
kind of thing. There was another movie. I know we seem to be talking about movies as opposed to
Yeah,
books
right.
tonight,
I know.
but there was one that was set up in Alaska, I think, and it was vampires.
Oh,
I don't remember what it was called, but because there are times in Alaska where it's dark all the time, there is no light.
30 Days of Night.
It might have been 30 Days of Night. I think that was it.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen that one, so I'm fuzzy on that one, but
But the winter imagery,
hmm.
that symbolism played, not that that was an Academy Award winning movie. I liked it. I liked that kind of movie.
Yeah,
But it used the symbolism of the cold and the snow and all of that to symbolize death.
absolutely.
So, we ought to do an episode where we break down books and talk about the symbolism within that book.
Honestly, that'd be very fun.
That
I
would
think
be
I think it'd be great.
wonderful. I love that idea.
I guarantee Patricia Briggs would be a really great author to study on that. I think she'd be really I'm in the middle of reading her latest Alpha and Omega Wild Sign.
Mm-hmm.
And it is phenomenally good right now. But one of the main themes of it, and not really a theme, but one of the main symbols, I suppose, is music. And so I think she would be a great author to kind of dissect on that
We
front.
might have to do that. And guys, if you have a book that you would like us to break down and go into the symbolism on it, let us know. We're open to that.
Absolutely. So moving on from seasons, lighting is also a very important aspect of nature. Just think of like sunrises, dawn, which, can symbolize hope or illumination, a light on the day. It's the start of a new day. It's again, a new beginning.
Yeah, it's a lot like spring in the fact that it's new beginnings and rebirth. It's also a way to make the point in your book that light always follows darkness. Right. There is always hope that whatever darkness you're going through is going to have an end. The light will come. I like the illumination idea that you talked about. That's pretty cool. I mean, dawn would be a perfect time to have your characters realize something.
True. Yes.
To have that epiphany where, that, and to have dawn have that be the time frame would be something that, and our writers might not even, our readers might not even realize it, but how cool would it be for us to know as writers that I threw that in there? That was,
Absolutely. Also, bless our poor characters that are up at dawn having realizations.
Good point. Writers are all sadists, so
that's very true. But yeah, light in general. Oh wait, I had a thought about when you said light always follows darkness. Karen Monning put a specific note at the beginning of one of her books because it was a rather dark book. But she says, I have my characters in darkness, but at some point, and this is very much a paraphrase because I do not have the book in front of me. But I always bring my characters to the light. And so that I think she would also probably be a great author to study for symbolism. She also uses music a lot. She uses light and dark. She uses, all those kinds of aspects of symbolism.
And then there's Game of Thrones where there's never any light. It's just all darkness.
Yeah.
There might be lightness every now and then, but it's not, you can't ever expect it. Every time something, at least in the TV show, I've never read all of his books, but
no.
In the TV show, you just never knew who was going to die.
Right.
Anybody was open for being killed off.
Right. And then you have, winter is coming is obviously a huge, part of those books and that TV show. And that just means, oh, that's bad. Like, okay, winter means death. Winter, means, the slowing of food. You don't have as much food ready. The snow, the endless snows. And if it's a long winter, like it's implied with Game of Thrones, that's, it's obviously not ideal.
Yeah.
It's something to fear coming. And that is the symbolism of winter.
Yeah. I think it's only in today's world where many of us have comforts and things that winter is a cozy thing. Right. Because we have shelter and we have a fire in our fireplace. And, that's not how it is for a lot of people out there. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Keep that in mind too, when you're using winter in your symbolism.
Right. Continuing on the theme of lighting, light itself it could be symbolic the way that you use lighting. If your character is stuck in some dark place and then, there just so happens to be a crack of light, that could be symbolic of, warmth, safety, truth, knowledge. There's ways to use lighting as I was trying to think of a specific example and now it's escaped me, but yeah, so just think about how you can use light in terms of, creating a bubble of safety for your character.
Yeah. Light is usually, it's always, well, not always, but connotated as goodness.
Right.
I think we've all seen that used, the good is usually white light, while evil is usually dark and shadowy.
Right.
I actually like the use of shadows and that kind of imagery and symbolism. That's more my style than the light and fluffy.
Absolutely. Which kind of brings me to darkness and the play of light with darkness. Darkness is evil and ignorance and danger. It's the unknown. And if you think about, like you said, playing with shadows, It's very fun because first of all, it does involve light. Light has to be there. And then you also have this darkness and you have like the long reaching shadows or, that kind of thing.
My Demon Hunter book starts
Mm-hmm.
in a shadowed alley, and she steps out of the shadows and the shadows cling to her. And I think I described it almost like a rubber band where it snapped when she had to step forth from the darkness into the light to have this battle that starts that book.
Yes.
Interesting. I do like to use dark symbolism. But
Yeah.
think about darkness as being unable to see.
Yeah. No,
how
definitely.
frightening is that? Think about how scary being blind is.
Absolutely.
It invokes fear. And, I love the idea of using darkness to portray ignorance.
Right. Well, exactly. And I don't necessarily think it's like the inability to see that is what is frightening. I think it's the unknown, so it's if you're not used to being blind to things, obviously the unknown is going to be way more frightening than, oh, I just can't see.
But literally not being like, I remember our electricity went out and I could not see anything. And I was like, I don't know where the candles are. I don't know where the flashlight, and it was scary.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Because we're not used to that. And, and I think that is absolutely the unknown.
Things that were familiar became
very unfamiliar.
Yeah.
Right. Because we don't, our main sense most of the time is vision. And so, when that's taken away, we have to, compensate with other senses that we are not used to using as our main sense.
And it can be scary. Yeah,
definitely. The next thing I have is plants. So moving from lighting, moving from seasons, moving into plants.
Okay.
Think about fruits. So apples represent temptation and loss of innocence.
The Garden of Eden.
Right. Yeah. Obviously the Garden of Eden. It was the first thing that I thought of. And recently my fiance and I have been watching Death Note, which is an anime. And the opening title sequence has an apple. And it's one of the only colored things in the title sequence. So, and the whole concept of the show is it's this teenage kid and he is doing some like crazy dark things. He falls into this dark stuff. And so, it's his loss of innocence. And I just thought that was super interesting because I had done these notes for this episode and then was watching that and I was like, oh, that makes sense. I was like, that's really cool.
That gives me chills. That's very well done for them to use that. That's great.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Fruits can also be like sweetness, like grapes, or it could be unluckiness. Like think of the lemon, if life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Lemons are kind of connotating unluckiness. Oh, and remember in Lord of the Rings, in the movie anyway?
Yeah.
Where that regent was eating the tomatoes. He had sent his son off to die. Basically, he was being an asshole and it sent his son off to die. And Pippin was singing and he was eating those tomatoes and they were bursting and running down his face. That was nature symbolism right there.
Absolutely.
Using the fruit of the tomato.
Right.
Think of how it made you feel.
Well, because it gave that bloody feeling, his son is dying.
And the tomatoes were just, it was
running down his face.
So well done.
Yeah.
And total symbolism with the fruit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then next I have weeds. So, evil, wildness, outcasts of society, they get used a lot in apocalyptic situations.
I can see that. Like they're used to show a loss of society, like in dystopian novels.
Exactly.
Think about the old Westerns where you would see the tumbleweeds blowing through the town and it kind of represented the fight for lawfulness when there was no law. There was law, but it was hard to keep order in that time. So it was a savage time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then something the complete opposite, think of flowers. So, there are some flowers that are actually considered weeds. You could kind of blend the two if you wanted, weeds to not stand for evil, but to stand for, I'm going to stand up for something that nobody else does.
Yeah. There's a sweetness in the loss,
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so flowers, they typically represent beauty and youth, strength and gentleness, but it can also be, that light in the darkness. And you can mix, a lot of these symbolisms together, because, flowers amidst, flower blooms among, dead trees or something like that.
Or think about that. We always see these pictures of this little flower growing out of the sidewalk.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Persistence.
Perseverance. Yes.
Yeah.
Persistence.
Yeah. Perseverance is probably a better word, but
they both work. They're both P words.
Yeah.
So flowers are also life, satisfaction, richness, maybe even opulence, depending on the flower.
Yeah.
Certain flowers, of course, mean certain things, like daffodils usually mean creativity.
That's very true.
The iris represents faith, valor, and wisdom, which the iris actually got its name from the Greek goddess of the rainbow, who was Iris.
Ah, that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. I knew that a lot of flowers had symbolism depending on the flower. Roses are typically, like you said, passion and love and that kind of thing. So
but think of the Venus flytrap. That's a flower, but it has
and it's also carnivorous.
It's got a totally different meaning than the little pretty daffodil that's out there.
Yeah. And then, like you said, moving on to roses. I mentioned roses, I guess. But they represent budding youth and romance and passion, and they're very vividly red most of the time. If you picture a rose, a lot of people picture red.
Yeah,
which is very
they're probably passionate. The most common flower for symbolism.
Yeah.
But a white rose means honesty and loyalty, as opposed to the red meaning passion and love and lust.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you're wanting to use flowers as symbolism in your story, I would suggest, go and Google exactly which flowers mean whatever you need them to mean for your story. And then you also have evergreen trees. So this one I thought was really cool because I never really thought about it. Other than, I've thought about trees before, but as a symbol for immortality. Which I thought was super cool because
that is very clever.
Right. And the concept that I, first came across this concept with was in Charmed, the TV show Charmed, and they came across this demon that was actually immortal. And so they couldn't figure out how to vanquish him. They didn't know how to defeat him. And so their solution was to turn him into a tree because a tree is also immortal.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And so I thought that was a really great way of using trees. And in my case, when I was doing this research, I came across evergreens specifically as a form of, or as a symbol for immortality.
I had never really thought about that before. I've thought about them as being symbolistic of, is symbolistic a word? Symbolic. That's the word. Yeah. I'm a couple drinks in.
You got it.
Determination, because they're always green. They're there when everything else is the skeletal. They've lost all their leaves. The evergreen is still there. So determination, honesty, endurance, survival, they stay green, even in that deadly winter.
Yes.
So, I think that you could use evergreens as all kinds of things. Hope in the midst of death, or hope in the midst of winter.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
And then, so next I'm going to move into talking a little bit about elements. So, water, earth, fire, air, that kind of thing. And I feel like each of these has so much more depth that we could cover.
Episodes all on their own, honestly.
Yeah, 100%. So, water typically represents purification and cleansing. And then, I just recently rewatched Avatar: The Last Airbender. And there's tons of elemental symbology. Is that a word? I just think of
we're just making up words left and right tonight.
Well, it makes me think of Wombology from SpongeBob, and I know that's wrong. And so then I question myself. And anyway, water is symbolic of purification and cleansing. And then in Avatar: The Last Airbender, the waterbender Katara uses it for healing. So it's a very refreshing, calm, cooling element, I suppose.
That's a good point. Think about, in the desert, life requires
Yeah.
water. So
Yeah.
water represents that life, that
Yes.
fertility, refreshment, motion. I mean, it is everything to us. We can't survive without it. So
Absolutely.
lack of water might be used in a dystopian novel to signify the will to survive.
Right. Yeah.
Then moving on to earth. It stands for abundance, grounding, femininity. I mean, think about Mother Earth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gaia, Mother Earth. Manifestation of matter, connection to Mother Nature. You might consider using it for images in your story, like elves, depending on what you write. Elves, like in Lord of the Rings, that there was all that forest symbolism there,
right?
Because they are immortal,
right?
That kind of thing. Think about, we really should look at some of the, like The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings might be another good one to dissect for symbolism and that kind of thing.
Definitely. I'm going to bring back up my Avatar: The Last Airbender stuff, just because I think it is such a great example of a lot of symbolism. Symbolism, that's the word I was looking for.
We're just making up words. It's okay.
Yeah, it's fine. Really good symbolism for elements, and earth often means strength. They're the muscly,
that's true,
nation. It's always going to be there. Earth is everlasting, I suppose, and it's think of the expression move heaven and earth. It's very symbolic of strength. It's very symbolic of stubbornness.
Well, and also
that kind of
someone being grounded.
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
always that character. Well, not always, but in a novel, there's always a character who seems to have their head on straight. And, the main character might be going, oh my God, we need to do. And there's always this really calm character that brings things back to, they're grounded, which is another way to use earth.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Good point. I hadn't really thought of that. And then fire is my favorite. I love fire, but it's a good one. I mean, you have creation, destruction, transformation. I always think of the Phoenix in Harry Potter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Boldness, passion, intuition. You can use fire so many ways. That Phoenix rising from the ashes can symbolize it's not over when you think it's over.
Definitely.
Fire also cleanses.
I was actually going to say the same thing, because I think fire is also, I think it's interesting because it's very opposite to water, fire, water. But at the same time, I think they do represent a lot of the same things, because fire can also be life. Think if you're in the middle of winter where, you're surrounded by death and skeletal trees, but you have this fire, and that allows you to be warm, and to, not succumb to the wilderness,
cook
and
your food.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and think about the fires that you use to replenish the land. You do that burning, whatever it is. What is that called?
They're prescribed burns.
Yeah. And so that brings new life to that land where it was unable to grow things. Absolutely. That burning helps bring rebirth as well. Yeah. Renew. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting, because you always think, well, water puts out fire, but also at the same time, they do share a lot of the same symbolic aspects. And then next we have air. So again, going back to Avatar: The Last Airbender, which I think is probably the best. Yeah, granted, I haven't read too many elemental stories, but I think the best example of elemental symbolism. Don't laugh at me.
Hey, I'm right ahead of you, so
fair enough. But in that show, it represents spirit, laughter. Aang, the main character, is, he's a kid, but he's full of spirit, and he talks about it all the time, like the airbender spirit. And so I think it also represents, freedom and roaming skies and the ability to expand and to explore.
You do think of it as being light,
Right, exactly.
I've always thought of it as connotating intelligence and communication. It's the very breath of life. It's how we live. We have to breathe the air to live. For some reason, that the air element always makes me think of the Divergent series. The Erudites, I think, the ones they were dressed in blue, and they were the intellect faction. For some reason, I always associate air with that faction for some reason.
Interesting.
Don't know why.
Well, maybe it has to do with, like, they feel like a lofty type of people.
And maybe there was symbolism in there that I was subconsciously seeing that I'd never really put a name to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
probably so, honestly.
Yeah. So, but somehow they made me associate that air element with that faction.
Yeah, definitely. Also think about your settings that you're using in your story. Various settings can have an impact on your reader and how they view the setting, how they view the emotions of the setting and the tone. A lot of the time, the placing of your scene can affect, how your reader feels about it. So forests, a lot of the time they're used as a place of evil and darkness because you've got the dense trees, you've got the underbrush, you've got things that can trip you up, the creatures that you don't understand might be hiding in there. But it can also be a place of sanctuary, of rest and life. You might escape to a forest. Running from things. There's a lot of places to hide in a forest. It can be a very good place to escape to.
Yeah, this is another thing that brings me to Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah.
Lord of the Rings used forests in all kinds of ways in the novels and movies. There were scary forests where there were spiders crawling through it and bad creatures coming into the forest, and it was scary to go into it.
Right.
And then there were the elven forests, which were sacred and beautiful.
What was that? Thank you.
Think about Robin Hood's merry men. They hid in the forest. It was safety to them. It was sanctuary in that novel.
Right.
They were able to get away from the evil sheriff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and then, like you said, Lord of the Rings also very much a sanctuary for Pippin and oh no. What's the other name? Pippin and Merry. Pippin and Merry.
Merry.
Good Lord. I'll move on. That's fine. Another setting that could be, it's so interesting to me thinking about settings because I find that I actually don't think about them very often, like the meaning of them and how symbolic they can be. So another one is the desert. Think about how isolating a desert is. It's so empty if you don't know where to look for creatures in life. It can symbolize loneliness and harshness and suffering.
Yeah, I can't really add much more to that, but it does make me think of Karen Monning, the Fever series.
Yeah.
The mirrors that she had.
Oh yeah.
Remember there was that one mirror that I guess it was either Jada that went through or
Max gone through them before, but
I don't remember who it was, but she did a great job of using the desert as getting across despair and fear and the unknown, and also pushing forward and perseverance and I'm going to survive this.
Absolutely.
Karen Monning is amazing.
Yeah, she's great. Absolutely. I think she probably broadly uses symbolism. I keep wanting to say symbology. It's horrible.
I kind of like that word. It might be a word.
But absolutely. And it's been so long since I read her books. My fiance is actually reading them right now.
Oh,
so she gets to experience it all for the first time. It's
my
wonderful.
God.
I know. But I think Karen Monning is probably extremely good at using symbolism. And like you said, the desert was a really good way to get across that despair that was needed in that scene.
And later I'm going to talk about this, but authors often don't mean to put things in there.
True.
But her stuff is so well done I would not doubt that she meant every single thing that she put in there.
She's a very interesting writing. I've read a lot about her process.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and she does a lot of rewriting of her scenes. And by I say I've read about her process, I read her posts on Facebook or whatever she's willing to put on Instagram or whatever. And she's talked about in the past, how often she rewrites a scene until it feels right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just, as a writer, we're all writers here, just making it feel right. Can take a lot of effort. And so I think she probably thinks very deeply about her symbolism and how she wants the reader to feel, and using that symbolism to evoke that emotion.
That's how I cook until it feels right.
Same concept.
No, but she, I might, we all had teachers teach us in English class when we were kids saying, oh, and the red curtain meant this. And I'm like, but did it really? Yeah. Did the writer really mean for the red curtain to mean that?
Definitely.
And later I will talk about what I found on that issue. But
interesting.
With Karen Manning, I would not doubt that she, and it may have been on rewrites, obviously.
Sure. Yeah.
Not probably the first draft, but she is absolutely brilliant with what she does. And so I would not be surprised if we asked her that question, that she would say, yes, I meant to do all of that.
Well, especially with the scene where, she has literally anything at her fingertips that she can imagine to put into the mirrors. Mm-hmm. And so using a desert to get across that despair and the loneliness and the I've lost everything, everything is gone and I am suffering, to choose that, chills
absolutely. Again. Yeah. Yeah.
So to choose that setting 100%, I guarantee she did that on purpose.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
And then the next setting that I have is a garden. Which, we hear a lot about gardens, the Garden of Eden. It's just a place of life, of I'm creating this, source of nourishment, of beauty, of, whatever. So it can represent, exactly. Mm-hmm. So it can represent a paradise or a haven or relaxation.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the Garden of Eden, but also it was used in Winona, the TV series Winona.
I still haven't finished that one, but yeah.
And it was supposed to be, it was interesting how they did it. And I won't ruin it for you since you haven't seen it, but it was supposed to be heaven, but not. Mm. So a garden can also be used to show deception, and you think of the Garden of Eden with the snake. The Garden of Eden was this paradise, but there was the snake that was there. Right. There was deception, the potential danger. Right. But it also ties in with the spring and summer where the fruits of the garden come to fruition. So gardens can be used in numerous ways. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and think about if you have a character who is very invested in, their gardening or whatever, if their garden starts to die, that could represent something that's happening in your character's life where they're not feeling very confident or they're not feeling too happy. They're entering a period of depression or something like that.
That book that we talked about writing together, The Witch Wall?
Yeah.
My character on my side, your character on your side is more industrial. It's more that magic is a process.
It's very blockish. It's like a squares and rectangles, hard edges.
Industrial. Yes. Whereas on my side, it is all about nature and the garden and that kind of thing. And my character is one who has a garden, and that's what the people on her side come to her for, is for the garden. And I think that we can use some symbolism on both sides as to what that means. There's any number of, and there could be deception in there. Right. And there will be, based on what we talked about the plot of that one.
Absolutely.
That makes me want to write that one again.
I was looking at notes for that one recently, and it was an interesting concept. I think we could probably revisit it.
Yeah.
After graduation.
So. Yes. Everything's after graduation.
Yes.
Okay.
So how can I use these symbols that we've talked about in our own writing? How can we put them into our stories and make our readers understand that, yeah, this is potentially symbolism, or make them, pick apart our stories to realize that it's symbolism, like we're talking about doing. So symbols help you to show without telling. I think we had a whole episode on showing, not telling.
I think we did.
Yeah, I think we did. I don't know what episode that is. If I were a better podcaster, I would have looked it up.
We have a lot of episodes, you guys. Lots
we do.
Of them.
Right. But if your character's in a forest and it's meant to be foreboding, then you can use lighting and the descriptions of the trees to bring that across. So you're not going to have the evergreens, which are immortal. You're going to have skeletal trees or very dark trees or very dense trees.
Shadows and
exactly
scariness.
Yes. Also think about your themes. Where can these nature symbols come into play with the themes of your novel? And you want to connect those themes to your symbolism. And let your symbols provide hints for your reader. We talked about earlier, we don't want to smack our readers in the face with, this is what this symbol means.
Yes.
This is what I want you to know. Be very vague or subtle. Subtle is a better word. Be subtle about it.
I think it's okay if they never figure it out, because like we were talking about, I think I subconsciously picked up on symbolism without even knowing it. And
Absolutely.
That's a good thing.
Well, and it's easy to think about, we can tell you spring means rebirth, but obviously that's when most of the baby critters are born. That's when trees are coming back from the long winter. That's when plants are sprouting and flowers bloom, that kind of thing. And a lot of it is very innately ingrained into us. It's about true. What symbolism is, but perhaps we've never put words to it. Allow your symbols to bring emotion to your story. So flowers of all kind hold different meanings, like you were talking about earlier. Each flower has a different type of symbolism, and that can bring about different emotions within your story. Consider your setting. So like I was talking about the forests and the deserts and the gardens, think of your book as a whole, and the ways that nature is going to play into the tone of your novel, because like you said, it's around us every day. It is completely engulfing's not the right word, but we interact with
encompassing
nature. Yes, absolutely. We interact with it every single day. So think about how it would interact with your characters, your main characters. Are they going to be stuck in a forest at some point? Are they going to get caught? Do they trip over a twig or a branch or whatever? So just keep those in mind.
Especially like in fantasy type books, the setting can mean a lot. Like the setting in an urban fantasy, as we've said before, is a character all by itself. But in a fantasy book, like back to the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, think of the Shire versus Mount Doom versus the Elven City, and
Absolutely.
How nature is portrayed and all of those things. Using nature can symbolize a lot about the characters and the races and what's going on in the world. And then I don't intentionally use symbolism on purpose, at least in my first draft.
Right.
The story just talks through me. My fingers kind of type it. It comes through my head and into my fingers, and it comes out on the page. So I actually wondered what other authors do. And this is what I was saying I was going to get to. I have some information about what other actual authors and their thoughts on symbolisms in their novels.
I like how you say actual authors. I feel like we're all actual
authors.
I want to put that out there.
We're all real authors. We are.
Yes.
So this kid in 1963, and he was taking a literature class like we all had to do in high school. And they were talking about the symbolism and the meanings. And he's like, really? Is that really what they meant? And so he wrote them. He wrote a ton of real authors in his time.
Fun.
I use that word again, real authors, published authors.
Published. Go with published.
And 12 of them replied. So his first question was, do you consciously, intentionally plan and place symbolism in your writing? And if yes, please state your method for doing so. Do you feel you subconsciously place symbolism in your writing? So Isaac Asimov responded.
And
said, consciously? Heavens no. Unconsciously, how can you avoid it?
Well, again, I think that's probably fair because, I'm going to bring back up the example of spring, but like obviously that's when things are,
Yeah.
renewing, and that's when things are sprouting. So yeah, I mean, I would 100%, I think, subconsciously use spring in a time of like, oh, my character is, becoming something new.
Yeah. And then Ray Bradbury, who was my first sci-fi love.
Mm-hmm.
I love Ray Bradbury. I still love Ray Bradbury. He said, "No, I never consciously place symbolism in my writing. That would be a self-conscious exercise, and self-consciousness is defeating to any creative act. Better to let the subconscious do the work for you and get out of the way. The best symbolism is always unsuspected and natural."
I was going to say, I think it can come across, or not even come across, but I think it can be difficult as writers to purposefully put symbolism, not symbology,
Symbology.
within our writing because, even on rewrites, which I've rewritten several of my works, I don't necessarily think about symbolism. I think about, settings and stuff, but not in terms of symbolism. But I guarantee if I go back through, Louis and Delaney, there probably is some sort of symbolism there.
There probably is, probably a ton of it without
Probably
us
so.
even knowing it.
Right.
Because us as writers, we subconsciously know, oh, spring, green, renewal, and it
exactly
comes out in our writing.
Exactly.
So I find that interesting that Ray Bradbury said that.
Yeah.
Ralph Ellison, who is another author that I love, he says symbolism arises out of action. Once a writer is conscious of the implicit symbolism which arises in the course of a narrative, he may take advantage of them and manipulate them consciously as a further resource of his art. Symbols which are imposed upon fiction from the outside tend to leave the reader dissatisfied by making him aware that something extraneous was added.
I would 100% agree with that. And I think that's what I'm trying to get at with this subtlety and the, I think it's good to be aware that it exists, which is the point of this episode. This is how nature can be symbolism. But I think by, making the reader aware that you've added something specifically for them to figure out, it does, I feel like, take away from, something that symbolism could be, I suppose.
Yeah. Like you said, if you slap them across the face with it, it's not going to be as, I still remember when you and I figured out some of Karen Monning's stuff. I mean, she didn't slap us across the face with it. And we were like, oh my God, did you realize this meant this? And you figured it out before I did. And oh my God.
I was just telling my fiance about that because she's reading Karen Monning now. And I can be such a book nerd and just go off on tangents of like, oh my God, this writer is amazing because of blah. But I was talking about, the way that she uses certain aspects in her novels where, I was like, oh, I just figured it out. I had to go and tell you. And that's what you want your readers to figure out is like, oh, the writer did this. It's super cool.
It means something,
right?
And then you go back and you look at all the stuff going, oh my God, here it is again. She was brilliant. She did this. She did this. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah.
All right. The second question this kid asked the writers was, do readers ever infer that there is symbolism in your writing where you had not intended there to be? And if so, what is your feeling about it? Do you find it humorous, annoying, etc.?
Right.
And Ralph Ellison said, yes, readers often infer that there is symbolism in my work, which I do not intend. My reaction is sometimes annoyance. It's sometimes humorous. It's sometimes even pleasant, indicating that the reader's mind has collaborated in a creative way with what I have written. And I think I would feel that way too. That
I was going to ask how you would feel about it.
If I have a bunch of fans someday, maybe, that are sitting there discussing, oh, do you think she meant this? Do you think she meant this? How honored I would feel that they were that into my book to be looking for hidden meanings.
Absolutely. I think I would feel the same way. I think I would, and not funny, but I think I would feel very enthusiastic about it. I can't
Yeah.
find the right word at the
Yeah.
moment, but I would be thrilled. Thrilled is a
Yeah.
good word. I would love to see what my readers find in my writing that I did not intend for them to make connections about.
We may have done it subconsciously. And so I'd be going, wow, I was brilliant.
Wow, I was pretty cool. And absolutely, I think I would thoroughly enjoy seeing what readers would find in my writing, because I just think that would be fun in general.
I think so too. I can't
imagine being annoyed.
Yeah, at all. That's all I
had.
Yeah, me too.
Awesome. I have an interview question for you though.
Okay.
What type of nature have you noticed ends up in your novels the most? Like, why do you think and if you do use nature symbolism, why do you think that's the case?
I don't know. I'm sure I do. Frickin' fairies, even though it's in our world, it's an urban fantasy. There is that hidden, what is it called? Not menagerie. What is the word?
Oh, I don't know.
I never can remember that word. I always try to make it menagerie, and that's not right.
Masquerade.
That's
yes.
It. There's the masquerade. And so there is a lot of stuff that's going on behind the scenes. And I like to think I probably do use symbolism that I don't realize.
Right.
Probably nature symbolism, because the Fae are very attuned to nature, where humans tend not to be.
I also want to point out, in that novel of yours, you use a white fog.
The white. That's how they travel. Yeah.
But in my head, I guess I imagine it as a fog. And I can't remember. It's been a while since I've read it, so I can't remember how you describe it, but it's a fog in my mind. And so, like, fog itself is also an aspect of nature.
That's true. And it obscures things. And in the white in my novel, you find out things about yourself that you don't expect to find out. So you're right. I did use symbolism without even realizing it.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, I wanted to point that out.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
What about you?
I always use nature. I don't think I can help myself. Like I said, I'm very much I pull in, if I'm playing a video game, it's always going to be the druid kind of character. I use the nature magic kind of person.
Well, so your book in Savannah
with Mac,
with Mac is all nature.
It's
that
pure
whole
nature.
Book is nature.
And that's because she resonates with nature. Like, she as a character, she is kind of like me in terms of, she always resonates with nature. So if she creates an illusion, it's likely going to be nature related. So very, very easy to pull in.
Yeah.
Nature
I
symbolism.
Still remember the ocean that night in her, and I bet that means something,
Probably, I don't know.
I know that scene in her bar with the ocean and how she did that. I guarantee I could find a symbolic meaning to that.
Listen, please do. I didn't do it consciously.
Neat.
Yeah, but absolutely. And I think I use it in all of my novels.
She's eating olives out of her.
I am eating olives.
So in her olives.
Yeah, and my novel. No, now I can't say it wrong. Listen, don't worry about it. I guarantee in all of them I use nature in some way. The only one that I'm thinking about is
all of them.
Oh no. Oh, you didn't do jokes for this episode.
Oh, I didn't. I forgot.
Well, that was one. So
there you go.
Welcome,
put it up,
listeners.
You're welcome.
I'm sure you missed those. I do. And that was mean. That was not a super sarcastic remark. I do miss the jokes.
Yeah. I mean, they're something.
But no, I don't know that I consciously put it into my novels. And the only novel that I can't think of an example of nature symbolism is Louis and Delaney. I don't think I have anything in that one, but I might, and I just don't realize it.
I bet you do.
I might. I know it's fall. I talk about fall a lot. And it's cold.
And you use lighting and darkness a lot in that one.
Oh, I guess I do. Oh, fair enough.
All
right, fair enough. That is a very light, dark novel.
It is a light, dark novel. So good. Oh,
that's fair. And I use flowers. I use flowers because Delaney is sunflower. and Louis is like lavender.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough.
Yep.
All right. So, and I didn't even like really realize that I did that. Like that was not something that I planned.
That all of our listeners that are writers here too are going to be going.
Are probably going to be like, yeah, I do that. Yeah,
exactly. And they're going to now be thinking about their books that they've written and going, I did that.
I think symbolism is a very fun hindsight, hindsight thing to go and look at what you've written and be like, oh yeah. And then you can expand on that. Like if you do plan on rewriting your novel, which I do all the time, you can kind of build on that symbolism.
With Kada, who went from our Atlanta to this totally other world, there is a lot of nature scenery used. I don't know that I meant it to be symbolic, but now I have to go back and reread it and see if it is.
Yeah.
Because absolutely. She goes to these different cities and they all have aspects of nature that we don't have here on our earth. Right. And she, being an earthling, is trying to figure out, what to do over there. So I bet that there is a lot of innate symbolism there that I didn't realize.
Definitely. Yeah.
So you got a sentence?
I do. I have a sentence challenge for you guys. So basically, if you're a new listener, I give a sentence. Oh my gosh, I'm feeling my drink now. I did finish it throughout the episode. So basically every week I give a sentence, and you use this sentence as a writing prompt in any work of, I was going to say work of art, which is fair, but a work of writing that you wish. I typically do one page because I want to make it a challenge for myself. And that's why I call it the sentence challenge. And I use this sentence anywhere within that one page. The idea is to have a beginning, middle, and end, and challenge yourself to get it done within that short amount of space. So this week's sentence is, it was a dark and stormy night.
I like it. Yeah. We all know that one.
We do all know that one. That's why I chose it, because it is very, I think, symbolic of, how those novels typically start. So
you going to do the outro? You're drunk.
Sure, I can try.
Well, you're tipsy. You're not drunk.
No, I'm not drunk. Thank you guys so much for listening. We really appreciate it. I know we had a really long break there for a minute, but we're really going to try to keep on track and do one every week for you guys. We have a lot of fun doing this. Come and follow us on all of our social media. We have Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, Instagram. We have all the good stuff. Come and check us out. You can find all of that information also on our website, which is eatdrinkwritepodcast.com. And the best way to get in touch with us is, you can message us on any of those various platforms, but the best way is to get in touch with us via our email. So eat.drink.write.podcast@gmail.com.
Yes.
And if you guys end up using those sentence challenges, we would love to read them. We've gotten them in the past. We said that we would do an episode.
We need to. Yeah.
We need to. We haven't had the chance, but we have thoroughly enjoyed reading them. So if you do our sentence challenges, feel free to send them in. We would love to read them. And we'll use them in an episode in the future.
We'll share them. So, if you want other people to hear what you've written, send them in and we'll read them out.
Absolutely. But most of all, thank you guys so much for listening. Also, thank you to our Patreons. We absolutely adore you guys. Thank you so much. And if you're interested in supporting us and what we do on this podcast, then please visit us at edwpodcast.com. It would be good if I had that one memorized, but I don't.
It's remember.
Patreon.com/EDW podcast.
That's it. And we do have 2 new patrons, Hank and Misty, I believe. So
yes,
thank you guys all so much. And that, I think, is everything we have. So we will see you next time.
See you next time. Thanks, guys.